All right, good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of council for Monday, March 7th, 2022. We're going to start with the singing of O Canada. We'll do a moment of reflection. And hopefully today's moment of reflection will be for those in Ukraine and what they're suffering through, as well as we'll look to the Deputy Mayor for the month of March, Councillor Dodge, who will read the land acknowledgement. So I'll turn it over to Sarah McWilliams, the Assistant Council Coordinator.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton bras et porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, over to you, Deputy Mayor Dodge.
Mr. Mayor, the land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminder that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And now I'll just get a brief mayor's report. I would like to first welcome Sarah McWilliams, and I think this is her first time as the quarterback of the council for our meetings today. She's handling all the control levers. She does have Evan McGinty, who is working with her, but we are in good hands with Sarah. Thank you very much, and welcome to the evening of council. And also joining me on the dais up here, I believe is what they call it. Is that what they call it? Awesome. She's already agreeing with me. We have Donna Del Vecchio, who is the deputy clerk, and she is joining us here tonight. So I want to welcome Donna for tonight's meeting as well. Also want to say congratulations to Trevor Parker, who started the role of Deputy Chief for the City of St. Catharines Fire Services today. Trevor is no stranger to the city's fire services and will mark his 20th anniversary this fall. He has climbed the ranks since beginning his career, including roles as training officer, captain, and platoon chief. His experience and background will be a great addition to the team, and he joins Chief Dave Upper and Deputy Chief Andrea Jejong. So I want to say congratulations to Trevor and looking forward to seeing him at council for future meetings as well. I'm also proud to announce that last Monday in closed session, City Council approved the inclusion of Habitat Humanity Niagara within the affordable housing project at 320 Geneva Street. Our decision to allocate city-owned lands to an extensive, affordable, social, and attainable housing development has generated one of the most impressive projects in city's history. Bethlehem Housing and Pantera announced the inclusion of Habitat for Humanity within the project adds another positive dynamic to a truly transformative project that takes a direct aim at Niagara's housing crisis. Habitat for Humanity's townhouses are just one piece of this important puzzle. So I just want to say, again, thank you to council for the decision and the leadership, for staff for all the work that they have done on this, and also for Bethlehem, Pantera, and Habitat for Humanity for coming together. That's going to add more than 200 affordable housing units and social housing to our stock here in our community. Also want to say thank you to council. Last week they made a decision to again approve a budget allocation for the Grantham Trail, and that is an extensive trail system. I want to acknowledge Councillor Townsend and Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Townsend actually had it as part of his campaign material in 2018, and that's the old rail spur that goes from Parnell all the way up to Welland Avenue, and it will be one of the most important active transportation routes that the city will have built in probably the last 20 years. And so it's going to be an opportunity for a lot of people to make decisions about how they want to get across the north end of our city in terms of from the Parnell Road up to Welland. And they could use their bike in a safe way. They can use rollerblades. They can be walking, running. They can be using mobility devices. But I got to say it was a very strong decision by council, and I want to thank staff for their leadership role in bringing this together. So when we talk about active transportation, that's what it looks like, and looking forward to seeing more projects like that come to fruition. We're also asking for public input on how to manage the gardens, floral displays, and other horticultural assets in the years to come. So the horticultural management plan is looking to develop a sustainable strategy to guide the city into the future, based on 10 guiding principles, including environmental sustainability, championing native species, community partners, and sustainable investment. So the community has, if you go to the city's website by March 17th, you can read the plan and ask for questions and feedback. And so this is a great opportunity. We do have some environmental groups in our community that have seemed to take a very much interest in what we're doing. This is a great place to spend their energies, if you will. The Labyrinth is opening up fundraising. So this is the exciting project over at Fairview Park, and again with the support of the City of St. Catharines, the Kiwanis Club, and the Fahala Project. So they're opening up a fundraising campaign to raise additional dollars for the Labyrinth. The construction will begin in the next couple of months. A community visioning of the entire park is planned to take place this summer to determine future opportunities to make the space vibrant, well-used, and accessible. All funds contributed to the community will go directly to this project's costs. So if you're looking to help support installation of a mental health space in our park, it'll be the first in a public park in St. Catharines. You can go to the city's website for more information. As well, some good news recently, some really good news as we continue to get great news coming out of the Canada Games Park. Not only has the park reached substantial completion of construction, but it was also announced that ASM Global, the operators of the Meridian Center, have been selected to operate as a third party. I just want to turn it over to Councillor Phillips, and he has been the city's representative on the Construction Oversight Committee. I think, Councillor, you've been almost every Friday in those meetings, if not many more. And if you can just provide a community update as to what you've experienced.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I was talking with CAO Oakes before the meeting, and we've been meeting every second Friday for the last 2 years via Zoom. So it has been a long time in getting to this point. And as you mentioned, we finally reached substantial completion. And at this point, I'd like to thank Nicole Wolf from the region, who has been the lead staff member on this. And she, in my mind, has done a tremendous job. And our CAO, David Oakes, has been the lead also from the city here, and he's done a great job keeping me apprised of what's going on beyond the construction. Excuse me. So substantial completion has been done, and that doesn't mean it's quite ready to go yet. There's still some finishing touches that are being added to it that have either been missed or added by our staff. It's interesting to note that this, as far as the gymnasium is concerned, it is the largest floating wooden floor in the province of Ontario. When you go in to see it, it is the same as looking at 4 high school basketball courts, one right after the other. So it's quite an amazing room to go along with the 2 arenas that are there, and there's the seniors gymnasium weight room that they have at the bottom of the hill is going to be moving up there too. It's going to be probably tripling the capacity that is there, and they're in the process of moving. As you mentioned, ASM has been hired to operate the building, and we're very pleased with that because we believe that they're doing a good job at Meridian Center, and this way it's going to be fair for all the people involved as far as Thorold, St. Catharines, Brock, and the region. So they will have their eye on that, and everybody will be treated equally. It is a very, very impressive facility. I've been through it a couple of times, and there certainly is the wow factor when you get a walk through. The final costs haven't been determined. I'm not ever going to claim that it's on budget. I don't know whether it is or not. If it isn't, it's getting real close. The Canada Summer Games staff, I understand they're moving their offices and they're hoping to move in this week, so that's how close it is. They're talking about being ready to do a test event of some kind, a mock-up as to what it's going to be like to make sure that their staff and the facility is what they expect. Nothing to do with construction, but they're looking for 4,500 volunteers from the community, and my understanding is that now they have over 3,000. So they still have a way to go. So to the people who are out there listening tonight, if you're interested in volunteering, you will have a choice as to what you volunteer for. You put down 3 choices and hopefully you'll get one of them. So they are they're looking for more volunteers. But everything is very impressive, and without Doug Hamilton, we wouldn't have any of this, I don't think. So I don't know, CAO Oaks, if you want to add anything to what I missed. But again, thank you very much for your effort.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one thing. We will be scheduling in the very near future tours to get council into the building to see all of the amazing amenities that are in the facility. So that should be happening in the next several weeks.
I failed to mention also, the track is ready to go. It's been ready to go for a long time. The parking lot's paved, it's lined. The beach volleyball courts are there. The only concern I have is when you're driving in through Shimon Parkway, there's one speed bump there you've got to be really careful with, or you'll go through the roof.
Especially with the lowriders, right?
Yes.
So I foresee, Councillor Phillips, you'll be giving a tour of the council here, and you'll be able to be the guide.
I'd be pleased to.
That's amazing. I also want to say congratulations on behalf of council to Jen Harper, founder of Cheekbone Beauty. She received the International Women's Day Award this past Friday, put on by the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce and Women in Niagara. And she is a very successful St. Catharines business person who is leading a cosmetics company that has representation and sustainable products. It is very much rooted in Indigenous culture, and very proud of Jen and all that she's been able to achieve with Cheekbone. Also, special congratulations to Giant Shoe Creative, 10-year anniversary here in downtown in St. Catharines. Brad Moore and Jessica Boulay, and I just want to say they got a team of about 20 people working now downtown St. Catharines. They started out from the Enterprise Center. So just to give you an example of the success that we have for our Enterprise Center that is operated here in the city of St. Catharines by our economic development with support from the province. A great success story with Giant Shoe Creative. So congratulations to their team. And also on Sunday, I was at the Bilbergone Arena, and there was a championship Sunday with a lot of hockey that was played. And I just want to say congratulations to Jeff Hassam, who was recognized with his years of service by Kiwanis, as well as John Versulis, and he was recognized with the first inaugural Bill Irwin Award. So John got that award, and Jeff Hassam was also recognized. And to all the volunteers, coaches, and all the folks who made this year a success in a very difficult year. This has been a great time to be there at the arena. I know Councillor Williamson was there. He was there with Chair Bradley. I was there with Chair Bradley for a bit as well. It was great to be back at Burgoyne Arena, and I just want to give a shout out to the staff. They've done an amazing job bringing that arena back to life. So just well done all around. This Wednesday, the St. John's Ukrainian Catholic Church is collecting essential supplies. Actually, it's all through the week. Donations can be made from 8:30 to 10 p.m. To 8 p.m. on Lakeshore Road. Monetary donations are preferred for immediate aid, And you can go to St. John's Church, their website. They have all the information for looking for medical supplies, military boots, tactical gear are most needed. And they're also planning a St. Patty's takeout dinner in support of humanitarian effort for Ukraine, and that's March 19th. There will be a candlelit vigil at St. Cyril Church, a Ukrainian church, just off the highway there on Wednesday at 7 p.m. this Wednesday, encouraging a lot of people to come out for a candlelit vigil for our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine. State of the City is coming up on March 17th. I'll be joined on stage by Jonesy will be joining me as well. They're a local band here in Niagara. They'll be coming on stage, but we'll be talking about all the great things that are happening, celebrating local businesses. In addition, just talking about what's the year ahead for St. Catharines and all that we've achieved as a council in 2021. So go to the Greater Niagara Chamber website to register. It'll be one of the first in-person events back at the PAC, and we're looking to see a lot of folks take place there. We have International Women's Day coming up on March 8th, and so just an opportunity again for us to collectively, each one of us can help create an inclusive, gender equal world. And on March 10th, it's Harriet Tubman Day. We'll be raising a flag here at City Hall. I want to thank the BME Church for continuing to share her legacy, and special thanks to Rochelle Bush for her leadership. So that's it for the council agenda. I'm now going to turn it over to the Deputy Clerk, and she'll take us through the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the following amendments are being made to this evening's agenda. Item 10.1, Ministry Zoning Order. The second last paragraph has been removed from the motion, as this clause was already approved at the council meeting of October 18th, 2021. An additional reason to move into closed session, verbal update regarding a lease agreement for Realty File 14.305, 17 Beach Street, Hague Bowl Arena. An additional reason to move into closed session, personal matters about an identifiable individual, the local board. The following items have been placed in Council's Sugar Sync folder. Confidential memorandum from Director of Corporate Services regarding arbitration update. A memorandum from Directors of Environmental Services and Financial Management Services regarding Port Dalhousie staircases.
Okay, are there any other amendments to the agenda? Councillor Harris?
I just wanted to confirm that the motion to move in camera regarding an identifiable individual on a board or committee, that's the one I put forward, I would hope.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Seeing no other, I need a motion mover and a seconder. Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor Townsend. All in favor? Show of hands. And that is carried. Okay, we have the adoption of the minutes. Council adopt the minutes of the meeting council held on February 28th. A very significant day for one of us. Can I have a motion to Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor Phillips? Any changes to the agenda? To the motion? Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move that the reading of item 6.5, that's the one in relation to the Grantham Rail Trail, be held over to the next council meeting. And the reason that I asked for that is because typically what we have, you've spoken to it, this was approved in consent last week and no one else was allowed to speak to it. But typically when we have a project of this magnitude, there is circulation of notifications and residents are made aware of what the proposal is.
So, Councillor, you can't speak to what you're doing, Councillor. So, first of all, Councillor, you can't speak to it. I wasn't here last meeting, Councillor. That's why I spoke to it. You could have lifted it off consent. You didn't do that. You failed to do that, Councillor.
Well, okay. I've asked that it be deferred for until the next meeting to give the public an opportunity.
Councillor, I'm going to ask the clerk. I'm going to ask the clerk because it would be reconsideration. So I'll look to the deputy clerk for an opinion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're correct. That would be a reconsideration.
I'm just asking for it to be deferred to the next meeting. I'm not asking for a reconsideration. That could be decided at that meeting.
Okay, what can be decided? Whether we approve the minutes or not?
Right. At least we're going to make an attempt to listen to the public on this, because people are just now are just finding out about it and are aware of it.
So this has been a 3-year project. They shouldn't be just finding out about it. Anyways, Councillor, so we have approval of the minutes in front of us. So I'll call the questions on the approval of the minutes. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, any conflicts of interest? Not seeing any conflicts of interest. So we go to the consent agenda. So I'll turn it to the clerk again.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on today's consent agenda, item 6.1, Financial Management Services 2021 Development Treasurer's Statement. Item 6.2, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Annual Report regarding Animal Control and Licensing Services. This has been removed from tonight's agenda and will be included on the March 28th agenda. And item 6.3, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Council Correspondence.
Okay, anything on the consent agenda that people would like to discuss? Seeing nothing pulled off the consent agenda, I'll call the question. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Littleton, seconded by Councillor McPherson.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes, sorry.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik?
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, I now move on to, so we do have, I think, a couple presentations, so I just want to read the declaration. Council chambers and all municipalities in our country represent the seat of local democracy, the many acts that govern us, understand the necessity of the collective voice when decisions are being made to grow our spaces, pass our bylaws, and to seek opinions into very complex issues. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but that we understand we do this in a way that never undermines any person's ability or dignity in our chambers. So we do have a presentation that's coming up, and it's from the St. Catharines Downtown Association. We had an update from Miss Rachel Braithwaite, Executive Director of the St. Catharines Downtown Association, and she will be taking us through a series of slides. I believe this is her first presentation to St. Catharines City Council officially as part of the strategic plan, and I just do want to again welcome Rachel to Council and say that I want to be the first to say you've done an outstanding job, and I was at the AGM about a week ago. It was a very well conducted AGM, and you reviewed a lot of the positive developments that have taken place in the downtown over the past year. And to you and your board and all the businesses in the downtown, I want to say on behalf of council, keep up the great work. It is exciting to see what you have done, and it's going to be just as exciting, if not more, to see what we have coming up in front of us. So over to you, Miss Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor Sendzik, and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate your support and the support of the city staff that we work closely with. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without that support, so thank you, and thank you for the time today. I am just going to share my screen with your permission. That is now not letting me here. This is fun. This is the first time Zoom has not let me share the screen, so I apologize. Bear with me.
Did you want us to share it, Rachel?
I think so. I'm not sure why it's not letting me. I apologize. Yeah, for some reason it's just not letting me. I'm sorry. But thank you. I appreciate that, Sarah. So this is just a quick overview. I thought I'd come and kind of share a little recap and update on what a BIA is and so forth. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Sarah, that would be great. Thank you. So first off, who we are. So we are a business improvement area. Business improvement areas actually started in Toronto back in the 70s, and now there's 300 across Ontario, and they are worldwide. It is basically a set geographical area where the commercial property owners pay a levy or a tax additional to their taxes that they pay the city, which goes into a pot that the board of directors that's made up of those members dictates on what it is spent on. We operate as a not-for-profit, and the majority of the money does go to beautification, marketing, events, advocacy, and so forth. So the St. Catharines Downtown Association, we are BIA, and we were established in 1973. We were one of the first BIAs in Ontario. We have over 700 members, and as mentioned, they are commercial property owners or business owners. We are directed by a board of directors, which is made up of volunteer members. We have 12 on our board. We also have 5 committees. We have activations, events, governance, marketing, streetscape, and sustainability committee, again, all made up with volunteers. The total commercial property value for our members is $325 million. So it is a big chunk. Just to give you one example, we have one property owner who last year paid $780,000 in taxes alone to the city of St. Catharines. So they are big players for sure. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And I'm going to go through these slides fairly quickly because I know my time is tight. So last year we had 25 new businesses open. So below there are a list, which I'm not going to read through. If you want to go to the next slide again, please, Sarah. Thank you. And so last year we really focused on creating a strategic plan for the next 3 years. So we came up with the following vision. With the city of St. Catharines, we choose to lead massive shifts to be a vibrant, diverse, and pedestrian-first downtown, where people tell us they can't wait to come back. We had 3 pillars that came from that strategic plan, which were experience, courageous leadership and engagement, and innovation and change. Next slide, please, Sarah. So out of experience, last year we conducted the following. We had a downtown block party. We had our pie festival, which many of you took part in. Thank you. We had our costume parade down on the streets through the Open Streets initiatives that we had. We had over 32 performances, more than 58 vendor markets, more than 20 community events, and worked with over 30 community partners. Next slide, please, Sarah. So some of the experiences that we focused on last year, we had 200 planters and hanging baskets that we helped fund, 110 snowflakes. We helped string over 320 feet of lights. We had 11 seasonal planters added. We painted 37 windows over the winter season and supported various other initiatives. Next slide, please. Under courageous leadership and engagement, some of the activities there, we wrote 13 letters advocating for our members to various levels of government. We have 5 committees, as mentioned, in working groups. Our board and committee members took part as well in governance training held by the Ontario Business Improvement Association. We conducted the following bylaws from the governance committee. We created a code of conduct, procurement policy, HR policy, board vacancy policy, and employee vaccination policy. Next slide, please, Sarah. Under innovation and change, we completed our strategic plan. I also sit on a number of boards, including the Ontario BIA board and their advocacy committee, and I also am proud to be on the Clean City committee with the city. We also have helped led a regional BIA collaboration, and we are continuing to work closely with our fellow BIAs across the region. We're also very lucky to have numerous meetings with mayors, and you're good, you can skip, with all of you. We appreciate that time. For marketing and communications, we really switched our focus this past year, hiring someone specifically to focus on this. And as you can see, it worked. Our followers increased dramatically, specifically with Instagram being our most popular. We also got a number of newspaper articles and other campaigns that we led throughout the downtown, really promoting the heart of St. Catharines. Next slide, please. Our plans for 2022. So this is where I want to focus a little bit more. Sorry, the slide is so boring. But this year, our plans are really to focus on securing additional funding through grants to help increase our capacity. We are focusing on the creation of inaugural events. So for example, we are working with local groups and businesses to create the Holiday Festival of Color in our downtown streets, to host a spiritual wellness fair and a senior citizens day, to name just a few. We are having an increased focus on events with 26 plus weekends pedestrianized and activated. This will be our second year for numerous events that were created last year, including our Pie Festival. Let me know if you want to be pied in the face again. Also a Halloween parade again, and our block party. We are part of organizing the OBIA conference that's coming to Niagara Falls this April, and we are leading a mobile tour as part of that to downtown St. Catharines. We're also working very closely with the Niagara College intern program and working with members in the region to reduce garbage in the downtown, which is often some complaints we get. So we're just working on focusing on education around that. We've also working really closely with the Niagara Regional Police Services and various other community organizations to address some of the safety concerns downtown. We're also focusing on beautification of the downtown, adding more planters this summer, and really helping to support the Year of the Garden initiative, which we're very excited to be part of. Would also really like to create a memorandum of understanding with the city. This is something that other BIAs across Ontario have done and implemented in partnership with their city that we have just seen a lot of success with, and has really helped smooth out some of the kinks sometimes as to who's responsible for what. So that is one thing that I would love your support with. But I know my time's up, so I will just say thank you very much for your time. I have been very impressed with the caliber of every single staff member I have worked closely with from the city of St. Catharines. And it really makes it a joy to do the job I do. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Braithwaite. And before we put any motions on the floor, just looking for questions of council. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our last Grape and Wine Festival board meeting, we were very excited to hear that the Grape and Wine Festival, Fall Festival, is going to be back as it always has been in the past with Parade and Montebello Park, and we're hoping to enhance more membership or events on St. Paul Street. Have you been in contact with our Executive Director, Dorian Anderson, yet? Do you have any plans that you can tell us about yet, or is that still in the making?
I would say still in the making for sure. Yeah, Dorian and I have definitely connected. I'm very excited and do want to support this initiative for sure. It's a big part of St. Catharines. And I know it's at Montebello Park, which is just outside our boundaries, but it is still in the downtown. So very much want to kind of work on getting the people to come downtown to our main streets for sure and support our small businesses at the same time.
Thank you. Yes, we were hoping that we could get some partnerships between restaurants and wineries and some events downtown instead of having it just basically a weekend, to expand it into a whole week to get more people on St. Paul Street and downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, to Rachel, thank you for that great presentation. I think it's so important that people understand the VIA and what it does. One question, you said, I believe, that you have 725 members?
That's right.
And you also mentioned 25 new businesses, but just for clarification, a business that is leasing a property is not an actual member, it's a property owner that's a member?
So the property owner is the one that pays directly the levy because it comes off the commercial property tax. However, often that's passed on to the business owner. So we count the business owners as our members as well. So for example, if you look at the core block where we're located, the GNCC is a tenant and they're a member. So they don't own the property. There's probably, I don't know how many tenants in the core block, if I'm honest with you, but quite a few. Each one of those would be one of our members.
Thank you for that. And a second question to you, Mr. Mayor. Last year, I heard from some of the businesses at the far end near Geneva, where dispatches and so on, that they had some ideas about doing something different in terms of the closing of that area and so on. Is there still a plan in the works for that, or?
Yeah, they are part of the road closure area, absolutely. And we're working quite closely with them. A number of the people in that east end of St. Paul Street do sit on our events and activations committees. So we're constantly kind of in the works to discuss ways to, there's a bit of a gap, right, between Carlisle and Bond, unfortunately, where the road is reopened. And it is a bit of a challenge getting people to walk that distance to the second road closure area. So we're coming up and brainstorming a number of different initiatives and ideas to help bridge that gap, so to speak. From activations in between that block, especially in front of the MTO building, it's quite a big space. and other different initiatives like that for sure.
Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. All right, seeing no, I got Councillor, I'll go with Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Porter and then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Ms. Brathwaite for your work on the DTA. My question is in regards to the Win the Space competition. I know that's something that the city and the DTA would run. Is there any plans to have this competition in the near future again?
Good question, and I love that you're asking it. Yes, is the easy answer for sure. It is something that we want to run again. We saw the success from the first time we did the program because we not only had one business open, but two. One of the runners-up actually opened their own business, and both businesses are still operating. So clearly a very successful program that runs across Ontario. So I have been in communication with some landlords that are interested in that program. We may be looking at doing it more of an office focus because we have seen a bit of a decrease in the use of our office spaces, and that has really hurt some of our businesses, especially through the daytime hours. So we may switch a little bit to do more of an office focus for the Win the Space program. And I've actually been in communication with Brocklink, who have that fantastic program where basically they mentor and train new businesses coming up, to see if that we could do that as a partnership together so that they can help take on the training piece and the workshops and the support and have more of a closer relationship with that. So definitely something we want to do, and we have included it in part of our planning. We've applied for 8 Canada Summer students, so fingers crossed on that one. A number of them will be dedicated to the Win the Space program.
Thank you for that. It's very exciting to hear that. My second question is in regards to, this one might be a little bit off topic, but other cities and communities have run things like where they've extended an invitation to the musical Swings exhibit to visit their downtowns, or it could be things like the Grey Goose mini putt exhibit. Is there any plans for the DTA to extend invites to not just these 2 exhibits, but beyond that for our downtown?
I love that. So my answer is yes. If you have connections, please connect us, because that's often the challenge. I'm fairly new, to be honest with you, to the St. Catharines area. So I'm building relationships as fast as I can. And I think it is all about partnerships, right? That's what makes us stronger, is collaborating together. That's the whole mandate of a BIA, is stronger together. So my answer is yes, we want everybody to come down to our main streets because we know how special they are. So yes, if you have ideas like that or connections, please reach out to me. I would love to hear them for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Brathwaite, I want to commend you on your work. You moved to a new community and jumped right in during a pandemic. And when I was downtown on weekends, I think that I saw you every single weekend supporting the road closures. I also saw you with members of the community who are doing street outreach, and you're in the middle of a lot of discussions around the issues in our downtown related to homelessness and addictions, and you bring people together. And I want to commend you for that. I also want to commend my council colleague, Robin McPherson, who's the chair and led a hiring process during the pandemic and during a retirement. And I think this is a great hire, and we have a fantastic strategic plan. I'm really impressed with it and all the events you're doing. So thank you. Thank you for moving here and for the work that you do. I have a few questions. I was excited to see you walking around the community or the downtown and looking at trees. I think can you describe what some of the activities of some of the committees like related to trees? And then I also wanted to ask you about the members' thoughts around some of the downtown residential developments. Are they looking forward to what's coming? Do you think that the businesses need it? I do hear sometimes from members of the community who think that, I'm not sure if the business is going to be able to sustain a condo development. And I hear from the businesses that they actually need residential development downtown. So what are your thoughts on that?
Awesome. So I'll start with the easy one. Residential development is needed big time. Intensification is key because those are the people that will in turn support our small businesses. So the more people living downtown, the more people shopping in our small businesses. We've been pretty lucky through the pandemic in that we have residential fairly close to our downtown. Sitting on the OBIA board, I have seen firsthand so many main streets that have absolutely collapsed because their office buildings were the only ones supporting them. Look at Toronto, for example, right? It has decimated their main streets because they have no shoppers, they have no diners, right? Whereas downtown St. Catharines, we are fairly lucky at the close proximity to residential, but the more high rises we have, the more intensification of residential in our downtown, the better it will be and the easier it will be for our businesses. So absolutely, I have not heard a negative viewpoint from our businesses with regards to the residential intensification happening. A number of them are actually really excited and looking to partner with those developers, offering discounts to residents that move in and looking to work with them in other ways like that. So there definitely is a lot of excitement around the developments coming. As far as they're concerned, they can't happen quick enough. And they're just happy to see something finally happen with those spaces. So very exciting for sure. Trees. So as mentioned, we have a streetscape and sustainability committee, and the purpose of that, well, there's lots of purposes I felt of that committee. They're handling a lot of stuff, which is why we have 2 interns from Niagara College working closely to support that committee. But trees is a big point for sure. We often get comments from our members. So for example, if you look at Carlisle, right by the bus station terminal, where it's very high traffic with all the buses, so already a bit of a pollution issue and an emission issue, but all the trees that were there have been chopped down, and unfortunately they have not been replaced, and I believe they've been chopped down for several years. So we see things like that in the downtown, and there's some on St. Paul's Street as well by Academy and other areas as well. And our members feel a bit neglected because they feel like, well, there was a tree and now it's gone and it's never coming back. And that's just because nobody cares. So we know it's not that nobody cares, because I've worked so closely with city staff and councillors, and I know you care. Sometimes it's just capacity is the issue, but we would love to see more trees in our downtown. There's been numerous studies that prove how trees help, not just health, mental health, walkability. The more walkable our downtown, the more the people that come to live in those residential developments will want to stay and shop in our downtown. If it's a concrete jungle, they're going to probably go somewhere else. So the more walkable our downtown can be, and it also adds shade, right? Which is another big challenge in a downtown. It is very concrete heavy. It's hard to find that shade. So trees would also add that. So as part of that committee, we have probably like 20 people on that committee. It is very active. Committee members are made up of both business owners and residents who are just very eager to see more beautification and more street calming, more bike lanes, more trees in our downtown. So part of that, we are doing a study and a report on the trees to kind of identify where trees are, where trees have been cut down and not replaced, and where there are gaps on trees. To kind of do more of a wholesome report to show where trees are needed the most, because it's very easy for us to say, oh, there's one cut down, it needs replaced, but maybe there's a street that doesn't have any trees, and maybe that should be our priority. So we're hoping that by doing this report, we'll have more of a wholesome ask when we come to the city for those replacements. It also will look at things like, new developments that come in where they've got the requirement for beautification and horticulture, but it's only done for the first year, and then those trees die, and who checks on that, right? There's a number of developments, unfortunately, in the downtown where we've seen that happen, where the trees were initially there, but they weren't maintained, and now they're not there anymore. So that's left a gap in our downtown. So thank you for asking. Sorry for the long answer, but definitely we have a lot of passionate members in our downtown.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the members, and especially to the members of that committee. And I look forward to that report coming forward. I'm excited to hear about all of this work. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor McPherson.
I just wanted to, first I wanted to thank Rachel because she did come in a very difficult time, and I may be biased, but I think she did an amazing job, and she continues to do an amazing job. So thank you, and thank you as well to Kat and to Grace, the two staff members. They are the ones together. That team of 3 has done work of about 50 over the last 6 months to a year. And Mr. Mayor, at this point, I was going to ask, would it be appropriate for me to ask for a report regarding Rachel's presentation?
Thank you, Councillor. We could put the motion on the floor. You could amend the motion to also include the request that you want to make. So we'll have the motion be brought forward. You'll move the motion, seconded by Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Motion will be to receive the presentation by the DIA, and then also your DTA, and also your amendment. If you want to just explain it.
Sure. So it's in regards to the Memorandum of Understanding. So I'd like to ask that staff work with the St. Catharines Downtown Association to explore the development of a Memorandum of Understanding between the city and the DTA to define the relationship, responsibilities, and expectations in relation to the improvement, beautification, maintenance, and promotion of the downtown, to recognize the joint commitment to maintain a successful and vibrant downtown. I've seen from my OBIA training that Rachel provided that this kind of understanding really clarifies things for not just the members, but for the city and for everyone involved. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just look to staff in terms of feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I had some conversations with Mr. York in economic development, and this is definitely a direction they support as well.
Thank you. Any other questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll look to the clerk. We can call the question. Yeah, we can do a hand vote. All in favor? It's a receive plus a staff. All support. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Braithwaite. Looking forward to future presentations to council. We're now going to move on to 10.1. This is regarding the task force that is being requested by Councillor Kushner. And Councillor Kushner has made some changes to his motion. Prior to his presentation, we do have a presentation, or prior to the motion coming to the floor, we have a presentation from St. Catharines resident Linda Crouch. And again, just as a reminder to Ms. Crouch that the motion that we're discussing currently is the motion to create a task force to bring attention to the lack of action by the provincial government in not supporting the MZO. So it has to be pertaining to that, that subject matter. I know there's an interest to expand on that, but council has already made a decision in October to go forward with the request for the MZO. So I would appreciate if you're not opining on the actual MZO request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Greetings, Mayor Senzik and City Councilors. I'm addressing you on the issue tonight of a city task force for the MZO on 406 Lakeshore. I know what you're thinking. Oh no, it's her again. I am also thinking that. Since February 2020, I've had to be a delegate on 5 separate issues that are each front burner, with every one of them having a profound direct impact on our beautiful, idyllic lakeside Port Weller East. 5 huge issues happening in a very small area is a lot. The Port Weller Residents Association, which I'm representing tonight as a board member, we have to speak up. And I, as the main researcher, if you have questions, I must appear here. So with so many issues going on simultaneously and so much controversy over each one of them, we ask, is it not reasonable to ask for a pause at status quo long enough for an overall vision plan to be created for the best future of Port Weller East? We ask if this is too much to ask. And I asked you to please, if you could open your attachments, the one showing the property outlined in red. So that's the subject lines. Okay. So to suggest this city task force is shocking, but knowing this is your third effort to push for it in MZO in a different way by promoting a tool that's an even heavier handed tool of having a task force to achieve it. It strains our credibility. We have some new information tonight for you to consider, please, before you vote on the city task force. That because we're wondering why someone is trying very hard to rush through the election campaign and or before the proposed development is actually coming to city council next month. So these following statements directly contradict what you knew when you voted on the MZO, but you cannot really separate the MZO from the task force because they're directly connected. So I'm just breezing through some comments here. First of all, the MZO lands are not directly adjacent to the Welland Canal, as the photo in my email, as outlined in red, nor is the MZO land adjacent to the dry docks. A concrete company owns the lands in between them. Heddle Shipyards does not own Port Willard dry docks. They are leased from the St. Lawrence Seaway. The Coast Guard contract is not for a ship to be built here. It's being built in British Columbia. Heddle also operates shipyards in Thunder Bay, Hamilton, and Nova Scotia. Heddle is only building components, and there's no guarantee of how much.
Ms. Crouch,
Yep.
I just need to, I apologize for interrupting. In terms of you're talking about companies, but we're here just to talk about the task force. So if you can stay on message and focus on the need for the task force, it would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll just jump to my next point then. Okay, because the task force is relating to the employment lands. The region can rejig your employment lands ratio to give you more residential lands, so you can get everything, including the MZO's new shovel-ready proposal of mixed uses with hundreds of multiple density units. And to vote for the task force is to vote against the newly redone proposed development with affordable housing, construction jobs, and the ensuing permanent massive tax revenue to boot. Okay, so did you know that there's a new current planning application on the lands, the shovel-ready mid to high density that's being processed through our planning department right now. Its open house was December 15th, and Scott Ritchie, the planner, told me he's shooting to have it come to City Council next month. The Ontario Land Tribunal hearing is scheduled for August 8th of this year, not that far away, and that the solicitors to the West and GM lands have asked to be removed, but the OLT denied that. The motion has tonight's motion has a clause stating that the other lands are unfairly included in the appeal, which is not true because obviously the OLT does not believe the appeal is frivolous or vexatious. And with that, that concludes my presentation tonight.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Do I have any questions of the presenter? Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Crouch. Just one question. Do I understand correctly? You're saying we're going to be seeing a different proposal for these lands than what we have seen before?
That is my understanding. That, for instance, we had Port Willard Residents Association open house meeting on February 24th. That the CAO, our councillors, and even Jenny Stevens stayed for 3 hours at. And we invited the planner to come there, as well as another group that we invited to come. And the plan that he showed was very different than the plan that I've ever seen, that's on the city's website. So I'm told by the planner that it's a very fluid thing, and they're trying to work out the best arrangement with the city of St. Catharines that makes everyone happy, has affordable housing, has employment land components, makes us a complete community here in Port Willard East, because we have nothing. We have industrial lands, and we have residences, and we have a marina. We don't have a corner store. When we get, this community, when you're talking about 45 acres, can do so much to complete us, because we, if you want to actually try and relate to this, councillors, please, if we want to go to a corner store, we have to decide whether or not we want to take a chance on the bridge, because the Seaway's website admits that the app is wrong. The web contradicts it. and the radio contradicts it? Or do we drive 15 minutes each way to go to Virgil? Like, that's just not something anyone else can. And that just shows what an incomplete community we have here. And that's why when we're asking like for the pause, and including a pause on the task force, because we believe that we need to have things rethought. And so anyhow, yeah, so going back to your question, yes, I believe there's something very different going through, and that they are actively, to my understanding, going through negotiations with the city planner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Crouch, for your presentation. I guess I'm hearing conflicting messages because in the past we had another development application or an extension of a site plan for subdivision, and I believe the Port Weller Residents Association was opposed to the expansion of the subdivision. They didn't want to see the subdivision, or they tried to stop it, or there was. So I'm hearing conflicting thoughts around development in Port Weller, because I feel like sometimes it's no more development, and then in this case suddenly we want to see a full-scale residential development in Port Weller because we don't have enough amenities. So I guess that, can you kind of describe where your neighborhood association is at with that?
Yeah, I would actually gladly speak to that, because that was a motion that was brought forward by Councillor Bill Phillips, because we had discovered that subdivision had been draft approved by City Council in 2011. And here was 2020, and it still wasn't registered on title, which means it wasn't complete yet. It was just getting extensions. And we had discovered that the environmental study that was done in 2010 didn't even cover what was supposed to be done by regional, provincial, and city policies, which was to look to see if there was a significant wildlife habitat in the forest. It was nothing about trying to change that. That was all that one was about. And I'm sure that our city minutes would show that. I imagine Councillor Phillips would hopefully concur with that, because that's what it was. We weren't. Yeah, perhaps we were seen as being anti-development, but we were being pro-environment. And actually, as it turns out, after that, because I did an FOI on the NPCA, looking for information on the environmental study, and it turned out that in that year, in 2010, before it went to council, the NPCA head planner said that the significant wildlife habitat was the remaining issue to be addressed. Then there was, the study was undertaken, and all it was a one-day inventory of 5 acres of the entire subdivision, with 2 acres of forest and the rest of it being meadow, and counting how many of each tree it was. And it wasn't a study of that whatsoever. But then I discovered, and I brought this to the MPCA's attention, through the FOI, I discovered that the same planner who said the significant wildlife habitat was the remaining issue to be studied, said in his letter to the city that it had been studied. So it wasn't the city's fault, but we were bringing the oversight of, and the fact that that's a necessary thing, that before any site alteration happens, that the certain things have to be followed, and they weren't followed. But unfortunately, we didn't find out about that part until after the subdivision was registered. But we came to you before it was registered. But it wasn't about shrinking it. It was about the environment. And actually, the picture behind me, that's the forest that went down.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
My next question relates to, well, you talked, like, you described how important it is to follow process just now and making sure that checks and balances are in place. So when the city undertook an employment lands needs assessment and looked, we had to look at provincial policy, regional policy, and ensure that we actually have employment lands to support future job growth. Because when we add more residents and we don't have jobs for people, they end up driving to their jobs, to places that do have employment lands, which is a problem. It's an environmental problem. So all of these things are sort of in balance. Do you feel that the city has done everything correctly in terms of our employment lands needs assessment, the public meetings, making sure that it was in line with provincial policy? Like, you don't have an issue with the steps we've taken to take a look at the city's employment lands needs in general, correct?
Okay, I do not profess to be a planner whatsoever. I do know that those things are the basis of the notice of appeal, because I've read it, because it is a publicly accessible document. So those are the things that they're saying, that those things weren't done properly, and that will be adjudicated at the hearing on August 8th. Let's see. I'm sorry, and what was the rest of your question? Sorry, I'm a little overwhelmed.
It's just about following process. So I think because the basis of what we're looking for, we followed provincial legislation and provincial policy when it came down to looking at all of our employment lands and determining which ones we could change over to residential, which ones we couldn't, which ones made sense. And so in terms of requesting an intervention from the province, it's not requesting an intervention because we didn't follow policy and we wanted to do something wild. We actually literally followed the book and the process, had the public meetings to change our official plan, and did everything in line, and we're actually just looking for provincial support. So I guess what I'm asking is, you seem to be objecting to the idea of a task force, which is looking at our balancing our need for residential intensification with employment lands. And I guess I'm trying to understand where the objection is coming from.
Okay, well, like I said, while I'm not a planner, I've certainly learned an awful lot about planning and in the last while. And I know, and I've had confirmed to me by planner and others, that the ratio of employment lands is not written in stone. It is something that can be rejigged with the region. And I want to say that I believe that the West lands and the GM lands and a subdivision of these lands all complement each other. And since this is the most ridiculous place in the entire city to have an industrial park, actually, if you want to just blow up your schedule that's attached to my email, you'll see that we're buried right up in the far corner of the city. And of course, we're surrounded by Niagara Lake orchards and vineyards. So it's a much more logical place to have it. And it's much more logical to rejig with the region for them to move the employment land somewhere else, that we then build a complete community in Port Weller East. And the people who would be working in the employment lands elsewhere that are in a more suitable place and who are closer to the highway, which is really important to them, that they would be the people living in the GM lands in Port Weller East. And and you get much more great tax revenue. And to me, it's just a win-win thing. And since this is shovel ready, I believe it's something really that council should definitely think hard about supporting, especially when it could be coming. I'm told by Scott Ritchie that he was shooting to have it come to council for April. So
thank you, Ms. Crouch. I don't know anything about the development coming back at all. I mean, it still is employment lands. So I can't even ask questions about that. I guess my other question is, I did hear that you had a resident association meeting, and the topic of the MZO came up. And I know that there are some members on your board who also are working on the GM lands in a coalition. So I'm trying to understand why it didn't come out that the holdup at the Ontario Land Tribunal is actually holding up the development of a massive brownfield that's a 10-minute walk from the downtown. It's near a 400 series highway. It's on a transit route. It's close to buses, and it's been widely accepted in the community and approved by council that the GM lands need to be changed into residential land. And this Ontario Land Tribunal appeal is actually preventing us from moving forward. I was really surprised that this didn't come up in the discussion. I know it's not just important for people in Ward 4 and who live around that neighborhood. People in Port Dalhousie, Port Weller, all over the place talk about the GM lands and the fact that the Ontario summer or the Canada Summer Games are coming, and this is, we need to see some action on this. Did this come up? Is this part of your discussion just in general about that property?
Okay, well, first of all, what we had was just an open house called an information night. And the planner for the MZO lands, or actually I should say the current, it wasn't discussing the MZO lands, and actually neither were the city councilors because they can't discuss that. He was discussing the development that they were presenting on the table. So it was just about information. I know that Dennis Van Meer is pretty much who you're talking about. I don't know who else being on our committee that I'm familiar with, but I do know he went to the microphone and he asked questions. And so, he had the opportunity. Anybody had the opportunity to ask any question that they wanted. So if he didn't, that was just his own personal decision. Like every person in the Grantham Lions Club had the ability to walk up to the microphone, and even through Zoom and Facebook, we had set up for that to simultaneously happen and interact with our meeting. So, and to the GM lands, we all know that nothing, it's not going to be built on in the next 10 years. There's so much that needs to be done to remediate, to investigate and remediate. And I always keep finding that people are trying to pit the GM lands against the Port Weller East lands, where they're totally different animals, but yet they complement each other. Because that will be done in its time, but this can be done now, and they're attracting, I believe, different type of residents who would come, people who want to live more, or like ours have assisted living, seniors living, many apartments, townhouses, commercial, a lot of mixed uses, a park. So to us, it completes our community, but that would, and overlooking with the buildings, how they're going to they always intend to, in their presentations, is to have the wall back against where Heddle is. And so all of the units would be facing Niagara.
Mr. Mayor, can I, like a point of order, what exactly are we talking about? A future development that hasn't even come to council, or what are we talking about here?
Thank you, Councillor.
Are we not talking about this committee, or are we talking about a future development that nobody knows about, nobody's ever seen, and we're having this in-depth conversation, which makes absolutely no sense right now?
Thank you, Councillor. You're correct. So, Ms. Crouch, I think we'll cease the conversation now. We've gone off topic from the task force, so I'm going to say thank you very much for your presentation. A motion to receive
it's very relevant, but thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Motion to receive presentation, Councillor Littleton, seconded by Councillor Garcia. And again, thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you, Ms. Crouch, for your presentation. Greatly appreciated. And we now have a motion that's being brought on the floor. Councillor Kushner is moving the motion. And I need a seconder for the motion, Councillor Porter. And the motion's coming up. It's coming. And, okay, that's the therefore be it resolved. Councillor, if you just want to take us through it, Councillor Kushner, and then the therefore be it resolved, that's what we'll be voting on right in front of us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the first comment I would make is that the process has not been rushed. It's been a very long process, which involved extensive consultation. We went through the official plan, which was done by one of our senior planners, Mr. Bellows, and at the time we commended him. We were very unanimous in our commendation of what staff had done. And then we did go to examine some of the employment plans, and we undertook an amendment to it, which was, as the motion indicates, which culminated in the approval of the official plan amendment in November 2020. That's over 2 years ago, and that was approved by City Council and was approved by Regional Council. And then the motion indicates that the appeal, which was done by a single landowner in April 2021, and he's held up the process since. And in the motion, we indicate that the appeal was unfair because he did have the option of scope his lands, that is, to appeal on the basis of his lands only, but instead he appealed the entire amendment and he held up the potential development of the GM and the West St. Catharines lands. And I would add we had another developer in town, a local developer, Mr. Rankin, whose lands were not put in conformity with the province's growth plan. That is, they were not changed to residential, and as a good corporate citizen, he decided not to appeal. So the fact is that with the appeal, we have held up the lands in the GM lands and the lands in West St. Catharines. And the lands in West St. Catharines, we have 2 shovel-ready health facilities, and I'm not sure what the housing prospects are, but these people have been held up for years, and that to me is very unfair to them. And for the developer to say that his appeal has merit, I would disagree with that. To put residential adjacent to heavy industry is not good planning, and it's most unfair to the dry docks, and that would stunt any ability of them to grow their business. And we do need manufacturing in this city. We do need, as Councillor Porter indicated, a balance between employment and residential lands. And if we look at the Ontario Land Tribunal, that's been, I think, 15 months since they began their deliberations, and this is taking a lot of time. And we talk about the need for residential lands being developed because we have land prices escalating, and a lot of that is due to supply restrictions, and that's exactly what we're doing with the appeal. So the motion indicates that if the MZO is not issued by March the 15th, then a task force would be established to bring public opinion in favor of what we're suggesting, that we have to support the unanimous decision by the city and regional governments to provide the much needed housing and to protect the employment lands within the city of St. Catharines. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner, and well articulated. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kushner, I'm sorry, I did not have time to talk to you earlier today. I talked to you a little bit about this, and I'm wondering if you would find it friendly if we provided much needed housing, including affordable housing, and to protect employment lands, and I guess I also want to include smart growth in here. And the reason why I'm saying this is that the province has just come out with the report from an affordability task force. There's a lot happening right now provincially with respect to creating more supply. There's discussion around how to create affordability. There have been several motions across many municipalities in Ontario calling for an end to the Ontario Land Tribunal for various reasons. And if you take a look at what happened here, there's been a massive delay, and delays for land development cost tons of money, which contribute to the affordability problem we're facing. So I sit every day waiting for the some more action on the GM lands. We know it has to get cleaned up, but there are massive carrying costs when things get tied up unnecessarily at the Ontario Land Tribunal, and it's at this point it's not working, and it's not supporting at this point an official well done process by the City of St. Catharines. So I wonder if this task force could also just take a look at the motions being passed by the other municipalities right now. Now, I'm not saying we need to disband it at this point. I just think that this affordability task force could take a look to see what's happening at the Ontario Land Tribunal, look at the motions from other municipalities, and we do need to first and foremost look at this MZO. This is, I would call this, I guess, people call it a reverse MZO, where it's actually coming from the municipality to support a really good, lengthy planning process that followed all of the legislation and provincial guidelines that we were supposed to follow, including the studies and the official plan amendments. So, Councillor Kushner, would you find that friendly if we added affordable housing? And could we also include in the scope just taking a look in general at the Ontario Land Tribunal and some of the other issues that it's caused as well, to see what we come out with?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that would be a much improved motion with the inclusion of affordable housing and the examination somewhat of the planning process, because the province is talking about cutting red tape, and this is a prime example where an opportunity exists to cut red tape.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Councillor Kushner. I feel like I could talk about this for a really long time, but I think that this task force is needed with all of the changes happening at the provincial level, new affordability reports coming out, and our crushing need for affordable housing, and with many municipalities around us having discussions around maintaining their urban boundary or expanding their urban boundary to support the massive growth that's happening in the greater Golden Horseshoe. We know we have to build for that, but for me, these are incredibly important environmental questions around smart growth, densification, transit-oriented development, and we cannot support sprawl. And I think that this task force could really start having these discussions and maybe turn into something else. So, Councillor Kushner, I thank you for bringing it forward. It really does help our city priorities to have this additional task force.
All right, thank you, Councillor Porter. I got Councillor Garcia, Councillor Miller, and then Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a couple of questions of staff, but first of all, since those amendments have been added, I just wanted to ask for some clarification on that second amendment, because it seems to be so broad. Do we not need to define better what we mean by a review of the Ontario Land Tribunal? Like, that could be a massive undertaking.
Okay, I'll look to Director Kite if she wants to come on. If not, we can define that as part of the task force when it comes to back for establishment.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, this was a last minute addition. I can't answer for Councillor Porter on what her intent was of the scope of the review. I think that question would be best directed to the author of this amendment.
I can answer that. I think there have been 30 motions across several municipalities asking to abolish the Ontario Land Tribunal. And I think this is not, this is a matter of looking at those motions, trying to understand what the problems are, and to see if we could come out with some ideas or recommendations, or, look into this and provide the feedback to the provincial government on, what has worked for us at the tribunal and what has been an absolute disaster in terms of holding up an extremely important project in this case. And I'm sure it's the same for other municipalities as well. And this is really about making sure that our local official plans are being followed in this particular case, and making sure that the Ontario Land Tribunal is not holding up things like good developments, affordable housing, because we know lots of affordable housing, and I know of several cases in St. Catharines that they've ended up at the OMB or the OLT, and housing built by not-for-profits that have been held up for months and months, adding hundreds of thousands of dollars onto their costs. I think it's a huge problem. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Porter. Sorry, Councillor Cushion, did you have some clarification as well before I ask my questions?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I would say that the second part would be a later stage. And the onus right now is to get the MZO issued. And then once that's done, we would move on to the second stage, which is to look at the scope. A review of the Ontario Land Tribunal, which I agree with the Director of Planning, that would be an owner's process, but it's something that would be required. Thank you.
I'd be happy to put it into 2 phases for this task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cushion. So, Mr. Mayor, through you, I had 2 questions of staff. Number one, since the presenter earlier mentioned that there was going to be another application coming for this lands on Lakeshore Road, am I correct, through you to the Director of Planning perhaps, to say that approval of this task force would have no impact on whether that applicant can submit another application or not? Is that correct?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, you're correct. We have received private applications for amendments at 406 Lakeshore Road, and we will be bringing forward a recommendation to council in Q2 of this year. The request to the ministry for an MZO does not impact the landowner's ability to make applications. However, if the ministry does issue the minister's zoning order, then the only opportunity for amendment would be at the provincial level.
Thank you for that. And my second question was, Councillor Kirchner mentioned correctly that this applicant chose to appeal all of the changes in employment lines as opposed to restricting it just to that one. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, perhaps to the city solicitor, has that position been revisited since? In other words, have we tried to discuss with that applicant whether they would be willing to reduce their appeal just to those lands?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes. At this time, there have been 4 case management conferences held on this matter at the Ontario Land Tribunal. In the earlier stages, there were discussions with the landowners group as to scoping out their properties. They provided their terms for doing so, which were not acceptable to the city.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, I'm just, thanks for you. Having support the motion, I'm just curious what the staff resource or complementary commitment to the task force is and how that's envisioned.
Through the mayor to the councillor, staff would not be able to support that task force. It would need to be at the political level.
Then I guess like, why is this a city motion? I guess practically speaking, couldn't councillors get together and do this on their own?
So I'll ask the deputy clerk on that one because that's more of a procedural question, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would have to review the terms of reference and ensure that there would be no quorum present.
Okay, I guess what my ultimate question is, and again, I think the goals are noble and worth achieving for sure. I guess I don't really know what this is. What is a task force without staff complement or resource committed to it?
So, Councillor Kushner, are you do you want to jump in, or I can jump in? What do you want to do?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like any task force, for example, like the task force regarding South Drive, the Old Glen Ridge School, that was a committee of council, and this would be a committee of council, and I'm sure we would be able to ask staff for advice, but staff would not be part of it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess my concern is creating that extra work for staff, which is kind of overworked. And I know, for example, on the South Drive Task Force, I know on other task forces had, staff involvement ends up being pretty heavy. So I guess we need to be cognizant, especially, we're adding stuff tonight kind of on the fly to it as well, whole second part of this. So is the task force going to report back to council then on updates, or how are we going to find out about what they're doing?
Well, if I can, Mr. Mayor, would be like any other task force, it would report regularly to council. And the first aspect would be to define terms of reference for the task force.
Okay. I mean, again, happy to support it, but I'm guessing already that sounds like the clerk's office is involved. So I would just advise that we be as cognizant as possible, especially when it comes to the planning department, which is, we know, very, very busy. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, to Councillor Miller's point, I think the one thing we've been missing in this whole thing is that we're striking a task force, but the first step would be define the terms of reference and what exactly we're doing and what's comprised of how many people. So if we could put that in the motion, it would probably make a little more sense that a city task force be created, or the terms of reference, direct the clerk to come back with the terms of reference for a task force and what it's comprised of and what its actual role is. And then we move forward, right? So I would hope that's a friendly amendment, because if not, the motion doesn't really do anything. Does that make sense, Councillor Kushner?
Well,
staff needs to come back with what the how it's composed, or what the task force actually even is.
Well, originally I had 3 members of council, and somebody suggested that be increased to 5. So that could be determined at a later stage. And hopefully we don't need the task force. Hopefully,
yeah, but this way you'd actually have, like, if we do, we already have it, and, then we can decide who's on it and what they're actually going to do. And I would suggest that probably one of the things, if you're going to be talking about how we're getting a lack of support, one of the people that should be, or a representative from the comms department from the city, should be part of that task force. That's all. Thanks.
To the CAO, because we're just talking about staffing, Councillor, I just want to go to the CAO and then we're going to wrap this up.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Maybe just to clarify, so the intent of the task force is really to advocate for the decision and the motion of council. I don't necessarily think there's a large staff requirement, in particular the development of the terms of reference. That would be the task force would need to do that. And in terms of having additional comm staff support, I would suggest that this would be done through the mayor's office staff, through that avenue rather than the corporate side.
And that was going to be my addition, is that the mayor's office can help support this group, and seeing to it that there will be a direct connection to the provincial government, meaning the goal is to get the provincial government to finally act, and more specifically the Minister of Municipal Housing and Affairs, who really hasn't done, they were handing out MZOs quite frequently, but in this case, which makes actually 100% sense, that they've gone a bit silent on this one. So we need to apply pressure, and that's what the task force is for. So, okay, Councillor Phillips.
Just a quick one. Mr. Mayor, we have a government relations staff member. Has that person been able to give any indication as to where this is at all in the minister's office?
Director York, if you're on.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I've reached out to the Director of Policy for the Ministry a number of times. The response is that it's still in a process.
Sorry, I didn't get that, Director York.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, we've spoken to the Director of Policy for the Minister's office a number of times, and the response is that it's still in a process.
Oh, so it's still in the queue. Okay. With this task force, if it is passed, it will be a task force. When we say a city task force, it's going to be councillors only, or will there be residents involved? Our government relations member, to me, would be someone who would be, should be there. I don't know if that should go to Councillor Kushner or Director Oakes.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Mayor, I would think if we begin by appointing 3 members of council, that they could do something very, very preliminary and consult with the mayor's office, because the mayor has been very active in promoting the MZO. So that's how I think the process would begin.
Thank you. And given the fact that we are adding a week to this, to March the 15th, just as a comment, I don't imagine that much is going to be done in the next week. So I think we'll be probably going ahead with this if it's passed. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so we got 3 members of council. We got support from the mayor's office. I think that'll be the extent of the staff support here, but I do think that the government relations person will be able to provide updates or any information that they've been able to gather from their contacts within the provincial government. So I think they'll be at least have a seat at the table as a resource as well. So Councillor Harris, 3 councillors to start with support from the mayor's office. And that would be the initial first iteration of getting this up and running. Okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move this to a vote. I'll ask you to do a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge? Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik?
Yes.
The motion's carried.
And I just want to, just before we move on from the subject matter, I do want to echo what Councillor Kushner has indicated, is that this was a very lengthy process. Staff put a considerable amount of time into the employment land study. And what I find very frustrating is that there are comments in the community by some small groups who are indicating that this wasn't transparent, that this was a rushed issue that we pushed through. getting kind of frustrating when I hear that. And it's there was a lot of public meetings. There was information that was being shared. It was both a regional and a city discussion. So I would ask the public who are watching and who may be a part of those groups that are pushing a false narrative that this was a very inclusive process, that there was a lot of time put into it. You may not agree with the decision of the MZO, but to also, and I'm just going to say this publicly, receiving emails that are disparaging to staff is insulting, and council has been in receipt of a number of emails that have been insulting to staff, and that kind of stuff has to stop, because I will say that the staff have put a lot of time into this, and to have to sit there and read emails claiming that staff are trying to hide things from the city and city councilors and from staff and from residents, it's inappropriate. So for those who are following along, if we're going to have respectful discussions, please let's do so in a manner that respects all parties. And we do it in a way that's at least understanding that we're all human beings here, and casting aspersions on people is inappropriate. So we'll now go to the report requests. And if you do have a notice of motion, you can put it on the floor anytime between now and the next meeting, which is near the end of March. So report request, Councillor Littleton.
Thank you. I have a report request for staff to report back on Oakdale Avenue in particular. I would like staff to look at a bunch of alternatives to the current street. And this is because of the what we heard last week from some of the folks who live in the area of the new development that was passed by council. Additionally, there's another development just down the road from that, where that development will be, and we have an open house on the 24th for another 290 units just off of Oakdale Avenue. So I think given the high volume, and there's other developments as well, just on that single street, and I mean, we're really talking, there could be literally 1,000 new people coming to live off of Oakdale. And so I'm asking for staff that would report that would look at traffic calming, additional crosswalks, speed humps, improved bike lanes, all of that for the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Motion to approve the, we got another report request. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did talk to David Oakes about this, our CAO, a little bit, but I wanted to put it out there and maybe officially request a memo. The Niagara region has recently passed a bylaw on creating a lobbyist registry, which I think is incredibly important for transparency and accountability of councillors. I do know it takes up a lot of, it takes up some clerk resources to put this together. And I'm wondering if there could be a memo, we could request that staff approach the region and ask if we could tag along with their registry process and perhaps do a fee for service somehow. I don't know how it could work, but it's not recreating our own registry, but having if the Niagara region could make their registry service available to the lower tiers in sort of a fee for service model. That's what I'm asking for. Thanks.
Great idea. Okay, we'll leave it with the CAO. So we have 2 requests of both staff. All in favor of the requests? It's carried. Okay, we have the minutes of the task force. The council file and receive and file the minutes of the advisory committees of council. Need a motion, Councillor McPherson, and seconded by Councillor Kushner. All in favor of the minutes? And those are carried. Okay, we're going to go into closed session. We know there is a closed session report, legal services annual litigation report. We also have a property matter and leasing agreement, and then we also have one on an identifiable individual municipal through board, and we have 3 discussions that will take place. So by attending the closed session, each member acknowledges that their obligation under the Code of Conduct, including responsibilities related to the confidentiality of closed session materials and discussions, remains the same as if they were physically present at the meeting. This includes that members are not permitted to record the proceedings and must ensure that no other person can see or hear any of the confidential deliberations taking place. If we're going to give it a few minutes so we can close council chambers here, we do have a number of councillors that are in person. So if councillors need to take a bit of a bio break for, say, three or 4 minutes, then we'll come back and start the in-camera. Okay, carried. Okay. So we are now rising from closed session. We did have a legal update on the annual report, and the motion is to receive the report on annual litigation, moved by Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Garcia. All in favor of this matter? Show of hands. This is just to receive a report. Okay, that's carried. The second one is a leasing agreement, and again, it's direction to staff to come back with further information on the leasing agreement that was discussed. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Townsend. And all in favor of this one? Again, just show of hands. Okay, so I've got that covered. The final one is, again, a staff direction to come back and report on, what would the language be?
What would the language be?
Oh, we got it? Donna's going to read the language. The deputy clerk, sorry.
The motion that the council requests that staff be directed to provide a report as directed.
Okay, as directed. Thank you.
Perfect. Can I make that motion, or could Councillor?
Yeah, Councillor Harris. Councillor Harris.
Could we have two seconders? Could we have Littleton and Porter? Is that such a possibility, or can they both do it?
How about Councillor Miller seconded if he's willing?
Okay.
Councillor Miller,
perfect.
thumbs up. Okay, I got thumbs up. Okay, all in favor? Any
That's
opposed?
unanimous?
Any opposed? No, it looks like it's unanimous. Just direction. Okay, the last one is now reading of bylaws, that the bylaws listed on the council agenda A to Z be read a first time, considered and passed, and that they be signed and executed by the mayor and city clerk. Motion to approve this, Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor McPherson, and all in favor. I'm going to go to the clerk because this should be a recorded vote.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia? Councillor Garcia?
Thumbs up, Councillor Garcia? Councillor Garcia, can you hear us? Thumbs up if you can or not? Okay, I don't know. I don't think you can.
Okay. Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Mayor Sensik?
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay. Oh, it's because we're all coming back into a different room now? Did we? They were all in the bigger room? Okay. All right, motion to adjourn. Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Phillips. All in favor?
Okay. Just point of order. Was that streamed, all that? Because we were still in the breakout room.
It was.
Yeah, so Kevin from WeStream picked it up that there wasn't a transition over yet, so you guys were brought in. Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening and talk to everybody soon. Enjoy the